eternal life. One thing man has thrived to find the key to since the beginning of time. Cryogenics may not be the key to eternal life, but could be the key to a prolonged. Let's discuss this peculiar occurrence. Welcome to Peculiar Occurrences. I am your host, Lilith Nova.
A Peculiar Occurrence fan? Well, I've opened up a store just for you. So head on over and buy your Peculiar Occurrence gear today. Links are in the description box below. Thank you.
To date, hundreds of people have been cryogenically frozen in the hopes that one day they would be revived with a cure to whatever it was that killed them. Now let's go through just a couple of people that have been frozen. And no, Walt Disney will not be on this list. That was merely a conspiracy theory, and he was never actually frozen.
Okay, and is Great Uncle Walt frozen underneath the Pirates of the Caribbean
He
line?
is not. We don't have him in an ice cube tray in the freezer, and no, not frozen. Was at the funeral, remember it well. No, not frozen.
And this will be the best web extra ever.
But Dr. James Bedford, a psych major at the University of California, however, was the first person to be cryogenically frozen. The choice to be frozen was completely his. He even left money for a metal capsule and liquid nitrogen in his will. So when he died on January 12, 1967, his family abided by his wishes. This was a huge deal in the cryonics field, and to this day, people in that field consider January 12th as Bedford Day. Bedford was actually switched to a different tank in 1991, and so far everything looks great. Thomas K. Donaldson, a mathematician, had ideas about death that was even more out there than cryonics. He believed that even though people were dead, that their brain still had functionality, and that we just don't have the technology to access it yet. For his sake, let's hope that's true. Because he died in 2006 and is assumed to be cryogenically frozen. He seemed to be pretty confident that he would be back someday. In 1982, during an interview, when asked for a piece of advice to hand down to cryogenicists, he said, "I'm sure that any piece of wisdom I would have to hand down would sound pretty stupid in 300 years. So I think it's best, so that I don't embarrass myself, that I say anything at all. So that I don't feel ashamed of myself in 300 years." End quote. In 2016, a 14-year-old girl won a historic court case against her father, asking the judge to grant permission for her mother to make the sole decision on what would happen to her body after she died. The girl wished to be cryogenically frozen, and her mother wished to uphold her wishes. Her father did not. She wrote the judge a heartfelt letter stating that she felt being cryogenically frozen was her one and only chance of living a prolonged life, even if that meant 200 years in the future. The judge ruled in her favor, and shortly after, she passed away. Her mother said she passed away in peace, knowing this procedure would take place after her death. Now, for the most disturbing story I came across in all of this, Dora Kent. Dora Kent was the center of a 1988 legal controversy on whether or not she had been murdered in order to facilitate her cryonic suspension. This all revolved around a company called Alcor. She was Alcor's 8th patient, and the oldest at the time to ever be cryogenically preserved. She was the mother of Sol Kent, a board member at Alcor. In December of 1987, succumbing to Alzheimer's disease and pneumonia, Kent was brought to Alcor facilities in Riverside, California, where she died. And Alcor workers removed her head and stored it in a nitrogen-filled container. No physician was in attendance when she died. The Riverside County Coroner's Office did an autopsy on Kent's headless body and determined the cause of death to be pneumonia. Later, the coroner said that the presence of certain metabolics in her system would suggest that she was still alive at the time of preservation. Drugs were used at the time of the cryonics process, and it was hard to determine whether the drugs were administered before or after death. The coroner then demanded the head for examination, along with all of Alcor's patient records and patient bodies. When Alcor workers refused to hand over her head along with the patient bodies, several Alcor workers and volunteers were arrested, although they were later released and no one was ever charged. In a SWAT team raid a week later, most of Alcor's property were seized, although it was later returned. The deputy coroner stated that Alcor facilities had better medical equipment than most mainstream hospitals. Alcor ended up suing the state for false arrest and illegal seizure and won both suits, including a $90,000 settlement on behalf of all 5 workers and volunteers who had been falsely arrested. Ultimately, the court ended up granting a restraining order against the coroner to protect the head of Dora Kent and the other patient bodies at Alcor. I know at this point you must be wondering why they cut off her head. Well, that's going to be revealed real soon. How is one cryogenically preserved? Well, by law, the patient must be declared legally dead. The body is first packed with ice and then injected with a solution that will keep the blood from clotting. Then the body is transported to a facility where all the blood is removed and it is replaced with a solution to preserve the body and organs. Then the body is chilled to right before freezing. After that, another solution is injected to keep ice from forming inside the body and the organs. Then the body is cooled to a negative 202 Fahrenheit. Then the body is placed inside a container and lowered into liquid nitrogen at a negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit. This is pretty much where they stay until a cure is found, whatever it was that killed them, and the ability to successfully unfreeze them. And this is all a very expensive process. Costs can include payments for medical staff to be on hand, for death verification, and transportation in dry ice to the preservation facility, and payments into a trust fund that is there to ensure indefinite storage in liquid nitrogen, and future revival costs. According to Wikipedia, as of 2011, cryopreservation costs can range from $28,000 to $200,000 and are often financed via life insurance. And some patients opt to only have their head preserved rather than the whole body because it's just less expensive, which would be why they cut her head off. As of now, we do not have the ability to safely unfreeze these people. That is why this is seen as such an unsafe pseudoscience by most mainstream scientists. Though we are getting closer by learning how to freeze and keep individual organs. Right now, most hospitals use organs that have been on ice but not actually frozen. Though eggs, sperm, bone marrow, stem cells, and cornea skin are already frozen and thawed and used regularly in people. See, there is a risk that frozen structures such as cells and organs can become damaged, with such things as hairline cracks. Then upon thawing, temperature fluctuations can cause a series of problems. Tissues and cells can be very badly damaged at this state. Reviving whole bodies also poses its own challenges, as organs need to start functioning on their own. The challenges of restoring blood flow to organs and tissues are already well known in emergency medicine, but it's perhaps encouraging that cooling yourself can slow down trauma. In fact, drowning victims that have been revived seem to have been protected by the cold water. Something that has led to long-standing research into using low-temperature approaches in surgery. Dennis Kowalski, president of the Michigan-based Cryogenics Institute, an organization fronting the human freezing, now claim that scientists might be close to being able to reanimate these people in 10 years, but definitely within the next 100 years. It all depends on the advances in medical technology. They're leaning towards things like stem cell research along with nanotechnology to be possible things that could safely help unfreeze these people. A Russian cryogenics firm wants to start freezing people before they die in an effort to bring them back to life in the future. Crorus is raising money to buy a facility in Switzerland where euthanization is legal to carry out these controversial procedures. By freezing a body before death, scientists say that they can stop the brain from experiencing extensive damage, increasing the chance that the body can one day be brought back to life. If plans go ahead, this will be the first time a company has froze a person before they died, supposedly. So what did you think about this peculiar occurrence? I personally think they should freeze people before they die because, I mean, they're not just talking about unfreezing people. They're talking about unfreezing people and actually reviving them from the dead. No. See, that has never made any sense to me. I've always thought that they should freeze people before they die because, I mean, like with things like Alzheimer's, by the time an Alzheimer's patient dies, they've already lost all that memory of who they were, of their life, all of that, and there's no getting that back. By the time these people actually die, their diseases and done the most damage that they can do. So I think that people should have the choice to stop their disease in its tracks in the first signs of like cancer or AIDS or Alzheimer's disease or anything like that, to be able to stop damage. I just think that should be a choice. That just makes sense to me. But what do you think about it? I want to know what you think about cryogenics, freezing people before they die, the law about how they have to wait till they die to freeze people. Let me know down below. And while you're down there, check out my Peculiar Occurrence merch in the description box below. As well, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share it with all your friends, and please, please, please subscribe to my channel and hit that little bell button while you're there, or else YouTube will not tell you when I upload. And until next time, keep your eyes peeled for all things peculiar. Do 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 do.
A Peculiar Occurrence fan? Well, I've opened up a store just for you. So head on over and buy your Peculiar Occurrence gear today. Links are in the description box below. Thank you.
Are you listening? Damn.